The recent meeting in Riyadh between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov marks a potential turning point in U.S.-Russia relations. Since the start of the Ukraine conflict, tensions have soared between the two superpowers. The Riyadh meeting signifies a tentative step towards dialogue and de-escalation. This meeting carries historical weight, reminiscent of the Cold War era. The potential for these talks to reshape the geopolitical landscape is undeniable. The significance of the Riyadh meeting lies in its potential to ease tensions. The world watches with bated breath, hoping for peace. Amidst deep mistrust, the US and Russia found common ground on key issues. They agreed to reinstate ambassadors, a symbolic gesture to restore diplomatic channels. This step shows a willingness to engage in dialogue, crucial for rebuilding trust. They also agreed to initiate talks on the Ukrainian settlement. These agreements offer a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. The Riyadh meeting, hailed by some as a step towards peace, has sparked outrage in Ukraine. Zelensky reacted angrily, denouncing the meeting as a betrayal and a dangerous concession to Russian aggression. For months, Ukraine has borne the brunt of Russia's military might, with its cities reduced to rubble. Exclusion from talks is a bitter pill for Ukrainians who feel betrayed by their allies. Zelensky demands Ukraine be included as an equal partner in future peace talks. The Riyadh meeting revealed significant challenges in negotiations. Russia insists certain issues are non-negotiable. Lavrov opposes NATO expansion and troops in Ukraine. He rejects U.S. proposals to halt strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This stance has been met with international condemnation. Russia's refusal raises concerns about its commitment to peace. Russia views Ukraine's NATO aspirations as a red line. Moscow sees NATO expansion as an existential threat. This remains a significant obstacle in negotiations. Russia's stance underscores the difficulty of finding a diplomatic solution. Lasting peace requires significant concessions from both sides. Section 5. The American Perspective, a Delicate Balancing Act. The United States faces a delicate balancing act in its approach to the Ukraine conflict. The Biden administration is under pressure to support Ukraine and hold Russia accountable, yet it must avoid direct military confrontation with Russia. The strategy includes military aid to Ukraine and economic sanctions on Russia. The U.S. also maintains a strong military presence in Europe. It is a high-stakes game of diplomacy with potentially catastrophic consequences for failure. Section 6. A divided global stage reactions to the Riyadh talks. The Riyadh meeting has elicited mixed reactions, highlighting the complexities of the Ukraine conflict. Turkey welcomed the talks, offering to host future negotiations. President Erdogan emphasized Ukraine's territorial integrity and a diplomatic solution. The UK expressed cautious optimism, stressing the need for concrete actions from Russia. Prime Minister Starmer emphasized a U.S. security guarantee to deter Russian aggression. Poland welcomed the U.S. commitment to a strong military presence in Eastern Europe. President Duda hopes for a permanent U.S. base in Poland. He stressed the need for continued support to Ukraine. France plans to host a second meeting on Ukraine and European security. French officials emphasized involving all stakeholders and respecting international law. These reactions underscore the challenges of a united international front. The international community remains divided on addressing Russian aggression. Section 7. The war continues. A grim reality check. Despite diplomatic efforts, the war in Ukraine rages on with devastating impacts on civilians and infrastructure. Fighting intensifies, ceasefires are violated, and millions are displaced. The humanitarian crisis deepens, with shortages of essential supplies. The pursuit of peace must continue alongside humanitarian efforts. Section 8. The broader implications, a world on edge. The Ukraine conflict has far-reaching implications for global security and stability. It has shattered the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. The war has exacerbated geopolitical tensions, particularly between the US, Russia, and China. The conflict has disrupted supply chains, driven up energy prices, and contributed to rising inflation. It has led to a surge in military spending worldwide. The Ukraine crisis has highlighted the fragility of the rules-based international order. The conflict underscores the devastating human cost of war. The world is at a crossroads. The choices we make today will determine the course of global affairs. We can choose dialogue and cooperation or continue down the road of conflict. The stakes have never been higher. Section 9. The road ahead. Uncertain and fraught with peril. The road ahead for Ukraine, Russia, and the world remains uncertain and fraught with peril. The Riyadh meeting, while a positive step, is just the beginning of a long and arduous journey towards peace. Significant obstacles remain, and the potential for setbacks and renewed conflict is high. Success will require sustained diplomatic engagement, painful compromises from all sides, and a willingness to address the underlying grievances that have fueled this conflict. It will also require the unwavering support of the international community, both in holding Russia accountable for its actions and in providing Ukraine with the assistance it needs to rebuild its shattered nation. The stakes are incredibly high. Failure to find a peaceful resolution to the Ukraine conflict will have devastating consequences not only for Ukraine and Russia, but for the entire world. The specter of a wider war in Europe, with the potential for nuclear escalation, looms large. The world is watching, hoping against hope that reason will prevail, and that this conflict can be brought to a swift and just end. The fate of Ukraine and perhaps the world hangs in the balance. To fully grasp the intricacies of the current US-Russia relations, one must look back at the historical context that has shaped this complex relationship over the years. The ties between these two superpowers have seen a myriad of transformations, from the ideological clashes of the Cold War to periods of cautious cooperation. The Cold War era, spanning from the late 1940s to the early 1990s, was marked by intense rivalry and mutual suspicion. The United States and the Soviet Union, representing opposing political ideologies, capitalism and communism, engaged in a protracted struggle for global influence. This period saw the world teetering on the brink of nuclear war, with events like the Cuban Missile Crisis bringing the superpowers perilously close to direct conflict. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of a new chapter in US-Russia relations. The initial post-Cold War years were characterized by a sense of cautious optimism, with both nations exploring avenues for cooperation and dialogue. However, this period of relative thaw was short-lived, as mutual distrust and divergent geopolitical interests resurfaced. The early 21st century witnessed a resurgence of tensions, fueled by disagreements over issues such as NATO expansion, the Iraq War, and Russia's actions in its near abroad. The annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 and its involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine further strained relations, leading to a series of sanctions and counter-sanctions. Today, the relationship between the US and Russia remains fraught with challenges. The legacy of past conflicts, ideological differences, and competing geopolitical interests continue to cast a long shadow over diplomatic efforts. As the world watches the unfolding events in Ukraine, it is clear that the historical context of US-Russia relations plays a crucial role in shaping the present and future dynamics between these two powerful nations. Understanding the historical context is essential for comprehending the complexities of the current geopolitical landscape. It serves as a reminder that the path to peace and stability is often winding and fraught with challenges, but also that sustained diplomatic engagement and mutual understanding can pave the way for a more cooperative future. As we delve deeper into the current US-Russia relations, it becomes crucial to analyze the key points of contention that continue to drive a wedge between these two superpowers. Understanding these issues is the first step toward identifying potential resolutions. One of the most contentious issues is NATO's expansion. The United States and its allies view NATO as a defensive alliance aimed at ensuring the security of its members. However, Russia perceives NATO's eastward expansion as a direct threat to its national security. This fundamental divergence has led to a series of confrontations, including the ongoing tensions in Ukraine. A potential resolution could involve a dialogue focused on establishing mutual security guarantees, where NATO's presence is balanced with assurances that address Russia's security concerns. Another significant point of contention is the issue of cyber warfare. Both nations have accused each other of orchestrating cyber attacks aimed at destabilizing their political systems and critical infrastructure. Establishing a bilateral cybersecurity agreement with transparent measures and verifiable actions could serve as a step toward mitigating this digital battleground. Human rights and democratic values also remain a critical area of disagreement. The United States frequently criticizes Russia for its domestic policies, including the suppression of political opposition and media freedom. Conversely, Russia views these criticisms as interference in its internal affairs. A potential pathway to resolution could involve creating platforms for civil society dialogue, where both nations engage in constructive discussions about human rights practices, fostering mutual respect and understanding. Economic sanctions represent another flashpoint. The U.S. has imposed numerous sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Ukraine and alleged interference in U.S. elections. These sanctions have had significant economic impacts on both nations. A phased approach to lifting sanctions, tied to verifiable actions and compliance with international norms, could pave the way for economic cooperation and stability. Lastly, arms control remains a critical issue. The recent lapses in arms control agreements, such as the INF Treaty, have reignited fears of a new arms race. Renewing commitments to arms control treaties and engaging in new negotiations could significantly reduce the risk of military escalation and enhance global security. In conclusion, while the points of contention between the U.S. and Russia are numerous and complex, potential resolutions do exist. By focusing on dialogue, mutual security assurances, transparency, respect for sovereignty, and renewed commitments to arms control, both nations can work towards a more stable and cooperative future. The path to resolution is undoubtedly challenging, but sustained diplomatic efforts and a willingness to understand each other's perspectives can lead to meaningful progress. As the U.S. and Russia navigate their complex relationship, the role of other global powers in the peace talks cannot be overlooked. Countries like China, the European Union, and regional players such as Turkey and Iran have their own interests and stakes in the outcome of these discussions. China, for instance, has been a vocal proponent of a multipolar world order and often finds itself aligned with Russia in countering U.S. influence. Beijing's strategic partnership with Moscow is driven by shared interests in economic cooperation, military collaboration, and a mutual desire to challenge Western hegemony. However, China also maintains robust economic ties with the United States, making its role in peace talks a delicate balancing act. The European Union, on the other hand, has a vested interest in ensuring stability on the continent. The EU's proximity to conflict zones like Ukraine means that any escalation in US-Russia tensions directly impacts European security and economic stability. The EU has often acted as a mediator, advocating for diplomatic solutions and sanctions aimed at curbing aggressive actions while promoting dialogue. Regional players such as Turkey and Iran also play significant roles. Turkey, a NATO member with complex relations with both the US and Russia, often finds itself in a unique position to influence peace talks. Its strategic location and military capabilities make it a key player in regional security dynamics. Iran, with its contentious relationship with the US and strategic ties with Russia, also has much at stake. Tehran's involvement in various regional conflicts and its nuclear ambitions add layers of complexity to its role in peace negotiations. Iran seeks to leverage its position to gain concessions and secure its interests in the region. These global powers bring diverse perspectives and interests to the table, making the peace talks a multifaceted and intricate process. Their involvement underscores the interconnected nature of international relations, where the actions and decisions of one nation can have far-reaching implications for others. In conclusion, the peace talks between the US and Russia are not just a bilateral affair, but a global concern. The role of other global powers, with their unique interests and strategic goals, adds complexity to the negotiations. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for crafting effective and sustainable resolutions that contribute to global stability and peace. As the peace talks between the US and Russia unfold, the economic implications for both nations are profound and multifaceted. For the United States, a successful resolution could mean the lifting of various sanctions imposed on Russia. This would potentially open up new markets for American businesses, particularly in the energy and agricultural sectors. Improved relations might also pave the way for greater cooperation in technology and innovation, areas where both countries have much to offer. For Russia, the economic stakes are equally high. Sanctions have had a significant impact on the Russian economy, restricting access to international financial markets and limiting investment opportunities. A successful peace agreement could alleviate some of these burdens, fostering economic growth and stability. Additionally, increased trade and investment from Western nations could help modernize Russia's infrastructure and diversify its economy, which has long been reliant on energy exports. However, the economic benefits are not guaranteed and depend heavily on the terms of the agreement and the willingness of both parties to adhere to them. There are also potential risks involved. For the US, easing sanctions could be seen as a sign of weakness, potentially emboldening other adversaries. For Russia, opening up its economy might expose it to greater foreign influence, something the Kremlin has historically been wary of. The global economy would also feel the ripple effects of a US-Russia peace agreement. Stability between these two powers could lead to more predictable energy prices, benefiting both producers and consumers worldwide. Moreover, reduced geopolitical tensions would likely boost investor confidence, leading to greater economic stability and growth on a global scale. In conclusion, the economic implications of the peace talks between the US and Russia are significant for both nations and the world at large. While the potential benefits are substantial, the risks and challenges cannot be overlooked. As the negotiations continue, the economic dimensions will undoubtedly play a crucial role in shaping the outcomes and the future of international relations. As we delve deeper into the ongoing peace talks between the US and Russia, it's crucial to consider the potential outcomes and future scenarios that could emerge from these negotiations. One possible outcome is a successful resolution that leads to the lifting of sanctions on Russia. This scenario would likely result in new economic opportunities for both nations. American businesses could gain access to Russian markets, especially in sectors like energy and agriculture, while Russia could benefit from increased trade and investment, fostering economic growth and stability. Another scenario involves partial agreements where only some sanctions are lifted and certain areas of cooperation are established. This would represent a cautious but positive step towards improved relations. However, the benefits might be limited, and the road to full normalization could be long and fraught with challenges. Conversely, there's the risk that talks could falter, leading to a continuation or even an escalation of tensions. This would perpetuate the economic hardships imposed by sanctions on Russia and maintain the status quo of restricted economic interactions between the two nations. The broader global implications of these outcomes cannot be ignored. A stable US-Russia relationship could lead to more predictable energy prices, benefiting the global economy. It could also reduce geopolitical tensions, boosting investor confidence and fostering international economic stability. However, the risks are equally significant. For the US, easing sanctions might be perceived as a sign of weakness, potentially encouraging adversarial actions from other nations. For Russia, opening up its economy could lead to increased foreign influence, something that the Kremlin has always been cautious about. In conclusion, the future scenarios stemming from the US-Russia peace talks are varied and complex. While the potential benefits are substantial, the risks and challenges are equally significant. As negotiations continue, the world watches closely, aware that the outcomes will shape not only the future of these two powerful nations, but also the broader landscape of international relations.